Hello everyone, we're going to jump right into it. This video is titled Anatoly Karpov versus the Sicilian Dragon. Yes, one time, a long time ago, Anatoly Karpov in his younger days was an E4 player. And with the black pieces, he played E5. No Carol Khan, right? No hiding out, behind these cramped openings. He played E5 versus E4, and uh, as a young man, he didn't play D4, he played E4, and he was a killer. So let's get right into it. This is Anatoly Karpov with the white pieces, and this is from San Antonio, 1972. So I believe Anatoly was like 20 at the time. He's playing Donald Byrne, who was rated 2470 at the time. Karpov was rated 2630 at the time. Very high rating. So the game started off e4, c5, knight of 3, d6. And those of you who know the Sicilian, you know that this is the start of the dragon formation. Bishop e3, chosen by Karpov, bishop g7, and f3. So we have this Yugoslav attack formation, very modern looking. Bishop c4, designed against black's intended push d5, which he can use as a gambit in some lines. So bishop to c4 not only provides some attacking possibilities on a diagonal, but prevents this tactical shot d5. a5, a4, and what white wants to do is just fix the queen side pawn advance over there on the queen side, but he's still going to castle over there. So knight takes d4, bishop takes d4, trading off a pair of pieces, opening up the c file. That's what black wants to do. Bishop e6. Karpov plays bishop b5, and there's rook c8. Castle. And notice that even with the pawn advanced on a4, the white queen side is still safe. Knight d7, bishop takes g7, king takes g7. So there's one priority checked off. The bishop is now absent from the fianchetto. Okay, f4, and now we can see why Karpov avoided the move bishop takes e6, because he wants to now exploit the position of that bishop which looks kind of vulnerable with the move f5. Knight f6, rook he1, queen c7, and we can see the traditional themes. White is playing on the king side, black is counterattacking on the queen side. Very sharp, dynamic opening. Queen d4, rook fd8, rook d2. White takes some prophylactic measures to guard his c2 pawn. d5, black gets his break in, e takes d5, bishop takes d5, and now, typical of Karpov, he offers an endgame. e6, rook ed1, and here the game is pretty equal, but Byrne falls asleep here and allows bishop h6, which wins the exchange on the spot. The rook cannot move because then queen c7 would fall. And if, say for instance, queen takes, then there's a problem because the rook still can't move, because then the knight would be captured with check. So that one move basically lost Byrne the game there, as he just dropped the exchange for nothing. And I'll just speed through the rest of these moves. Got a lot of games to go through. Karpov had a long career, so I'm not going to belabor the point. But you can see his weapon of choice against the dragon, dreaded Yugoslav attack. Although he played it, in an old school fashion here with f4, we don't see him ripping open the king side here with h4, h5, and things like that. Perhaps we'll see that later. But Karpov won that game, so that's 1-up. His next game was in the Olympiad 1972, and this was against a player named Jurgen Dubal. Again, Yugoslav attack setup, and now we see a more aggressive approach with this early g4. He doesn't castle, no bishop c4, but g4 right away. Knight takes d4, bishop takes d4. Again, just getting rid of a set of minor pieces. And Black's plan is real simple. He wants to play bishop e6, rook c8, and he clears the knight out of the way. So he wants to play bishop e6, rook c8, get the queen to a5, and be right there to greet White when he castles queenside. And there it is, right? So, now Black has ideas of sacking exchange with rook takes c3 and followed by queen takes a2 and things like that. So White has to be careful. a3, rook a b8. So now the next idea is to play, plan B, so to speak, is to play b5 and b4, ripping open the B file. G4, knight d5, and this is the nature of these opposite wing attacks, where whoever can basically gain control of the initiative is going to have the advantage. Pawns are not at a high premium in these situations. Sometimes one player will sack a pawn or two just to get control over the tempi in the game. Knight d5, and immediately we're down to this ending. Okay, so now once the queens are traded off, all the hyper aggressive action is stopped. Nobody has to worry about being mated now, but we have to it says the ending possibilities. We do see Karpov has the two bishops, and if the dark square bishops are traded, White has the only bishop left. Another feature in these type of positions is that with the pawn on d5, it's very hard to play e6 or e5 because the capture here will leave Black with some type of isolated pawn or hanging pawns in the center. So this pawn is often a serious nuisance to Black, as well as this pawn here. Okay, so we're going to see how this is played by Karpov. Again, Karpov is about 20 years old at the time, so he's not quite in his prime, but he's full of energy here. Bishop a7, bishop e3, so he just preserves the bishop here. King a2, getting off the b file. See, rook c7, king b3, rook b8, bishop to d3, knight f4, again preserving these bishops. f5 takes, e takes, and I think Black did a good job with resolving this situation on the e file, because now he took the potentially weak e pawn, transfers it to the f file, and now his d pawn is blocked by the white e pawn. So now this pawn can not really even be attacked. Rook g4, threatening the piece. Rook g1, knight h3, rook e1, bishop f5, attacking the knight. Rook takes e3. So now this bishop is attacking the knight on h3. Knight comes back to f4. So now it's one of those situations where the knight can't really be captured unless White is willing to give up the exchange. But this bishop has some nice squares that it can go to. Okay, so it's I don't know. I think the knight in this position is probably a little better than that bishop there. king a2, king f8, b4. And we see white advancing his majority, and he creates a passed pawn. And the game is equal here, but black is not as strong as Karpov here, and he allows Karpov to outplay him in this position. Here he sacrifices a pawn, but the rook comes to the 7th rank and gets behind these pawns. And then Karpov just simply starts to win material here. And Karpov went on to win this end game with this extra pawn and extra piece. And so he kind of outplayed this player from a, pretty much drawn position, but Karpov was about 200 points stronger. So what we can observe from the first two games and from the young Karpov at 20 years old, that although employing the dragon, we don't see these hyper aggressive attacks that we normally would associate with it. Here we see him starting out with an attack, but this going into an end game. So he's always looking at the positional aspects, and if he sees possibility to, win in that manner, he'll opt out for that. So we go forward another year. It's a European Championship, and he's playing one of the English players, Andrew Whiteley, who wrote a great book that I have somewhere in my library. What's the name of it? World Championship, and I think there's two parts. It's Whiteley, Keane, another English player. I can't remember, but I think it covers from Botvinnik to Kasparov. I can't remember. Anyway, it's an old book, but that's who's playing the black pieces, and this is from 1973. Excuse me. So here we are in our dragon, and now we see Karpov employing bishop c4 here. There's a Yugoslav attack. The bishop drops back. And notice the bishop not only provides more attacking possibilities, right, helps make d5 harder for black to achieve, but also provides extra defense on the queen side. So good move. And there we go, h4. Karpov must have been having some secret talks with Bobby Fischer. Bobby Fischer told him to move up the h-pawn and sack mate. So we see here in 1973, Karpov is employing this plan. So it's knight e5. The idea of getting rid of the bishop here, right? Getting rid of one of these defensive pieces. So this knight move is very important. You see this knight either exchanging off a pair of minor pieces or going to e5 with the idea, again, opening up the c file, which is very important, and then forcing white to part with one of the defensive pieces in his position. So king b1, knight takes c4, bishop takes c4, rook takes c4, knight b3, attacking the queen, bishop h6. There's one of the important ideas, getting rid of that strong fianchetto bishop. Bishop takes, queen takes, so he replaces the bishop with the queen. Karpov throws some more pawns up, g4, bishop e6, and we can look at the board right now, and we can say that white's king side play is much faster than whatever black is trying to accomplish on the queen side. Black's queen side counterplay is looking kind of slow. The rook is still on a8. The pawns on the 7th rank are still there, and on the other side of the board, we have the g and h pawns running up the board quickly. Knight d4, knight d7. Again, this all seems a little bit too slow as far as I'm concerned for black. h5, rook ac8. Finally, the rook gets involved. H takes, and then the king of prophylaxis, Anatoly Karpov, he will not have an exchange sacrifice done on him. And he just simply plays knight ce2. Of course, maybe a player like Kasparov would have played knight takes e6 here, you know, something like that. But just knight ce2 deadly, removing the knight. You know, this Karpov style is when you look at his games, I mean, his style is, that's what my coach told me. You know, we were talking about Karpov. My coach told me some cool stories with Karpov, about Karpov. But anyway, this style prophylaxis is Karpov sees what you're gonna do like way ahead of time, and he just stops that. So meanwhile, you're going along with your plan, and then you get to, you get to like the point where your plan is supposed to manifest, and then there's nothing there. That's Karpov style in a nutshell. That's what my coach told me, Grandmaster. Anyway, I just spoke to him a couple of days ago. That was what we were talking about. But anyway, so knight ce2, rook 4 to c5, and then c3. Again, this is all prophylaxis. He just makes sure that black cannot do anything. He shuts that down before he continues. Knight f8, rook d to g1, queen e5, knight g3. Again, see, like a player like me, I ought to play like knight f5. That's probably a good move. I'll have to look at that, but again, often there's more than one good move in a position. It depends on your style. Karpov plays knight g3. Very patient though. g5, that has to be bad because it's just provoking this move right here. And that's what Karpov plays. Bishop takes. And he takes with the pawn. He could have took with the knight. Not a big deal, but he's not taking any chances with rook takes c3 or none of that. So he just simply plays simple chess. He opens up the file for the rooks. f6 is pretty much forced, and then f4 is just nasty because he sacrifices this pawn right here. But it's, again, in these opposite wings attacks, price of a pawn, or the value of a pawn rather, is just like the same as one of these countries where the economy is collapsed. You need 40,000 whatever shingles, just to get a loaf of bread. That's, the pawns aren't worth that much when you have these type of positions. So Karpov rightly sacrifices it. Queen takes e4, king a1, and black tries to make the run for it. F takes g5, F takes g5, queen takes g5, and then this is the straw that breaks the camel's back as black plays rook e5 and just simply queen h5, and there's no place to run for the queen, or for the king rather, and it's going to be mate in short order. So that was a powerful attacking game by the young Karpov and his debut with bishop c4. Let's continue. We'll move a little quicker. Here's 1974. At this point, Karpov has reached 2,700, which today is like, which would be like reaching 2,800 today. Back then you didn't have grandmasters at 2,700. It was like Fischer was the highest in history, and then you had Karpov after that, and then later on Kasparov will reach 2,700. You didn't have 100 grandmasters over 2,700. So here's 1974. Here's the match that took place between Karpov and Viktor Korchnoi. This is game 2, and as you all know, Karpov was supposed to play Fischer, which would have been awesome. but you know, we all know what happened. So here we go. Korchnoi plays the dragon. G6, bishop E3, bishop G7, F3, knight C6, queen D2 this time, castle, and now bishop C4, bishop D7, H4, and we see Karpov being very aggressive here. Rook C8, bishop B3, knight E5, the same idea, the knight was coming to C4, castle, take C4, and H5. Again, the speed of the attacks is very important in these opposite wings. And the thing is, it's not just about the dragon here, but just remember this in general with opposite wing castling. Speed is very important. Again, we see the jettisoning of a pawn for an attack. So knight takes H5. This is all common now, right? Gives up the pawn just to open the file. G4, because you're gaining time for material, right? This is real. You can trade time for material. So knight F6, knight D2, and notice Karpov does these type of maneuvers. Again, it discourages these exchange sacrifices because you got another knight here. Later on, when it's safe, this knight might come to G3 and F5 or something like that. There's a queen hanging around. And now you can see the benefits of having the other knight here, because if there was only one knight, around, then this would be threatened, and then white would have to consider, those type of moves. So bishop H6, Korchnoi takes, queen takes H6, rook FC8, and now you gotta think about the double exchange sacrifice, right? I'm not saying he could do it here, but you got to think about it. Karpov definitely did. He plays his rook to the third rank. Rook 4 to C5. And now G5. Okay, so another sacrifice of material for time. This move distracts Korchnoi from the queen side. Now he's over on the king side with the rook. This gives Karpov time to do what he wants to do. The main issue here is getting this knight away from the king side. Therefore, that way H7 will be vulnerable. This is the idea behind this move. One of the ideas tactically behind this move, rook D5, is that the knight cannot take. Right, just be mating too. You see it says mate. So rook D5, rook takes D5, knight takes D5, and again the threat is, the same thing. For instance, queen takes A2, not knight takes F6, but just simply knight takes E7 here, and then you can grab the rook. The problem with taking the knight here is that after e takes F6, the king can slip out via F8. So you have to be careful with your calculations. That's why knight takes E7 here, king H8, and then you could just take the rook here. Or you could throw a slick move in between here also. Doesn't matter. But back to the position, knight takes D5, rook E8. So this is why Korchnoi comes back. Remember what I said about this knight earlier? How first it does the duty of, discouraging any exchange sacrifice on C3, but later on it might move up the board. There you see it. Now it's done its duty as a defensive piece, and now it joins in the attack. So knight E4, bishop C6, and very strong move by Anatoly here. Again, you see this theme harassing that knight. Okay, what's the idea here? If excuse me, if D takes E5, then knight takes F6. And now, after E takes, again, not queen takes H7 because the king, you have to be very concrete in your calculations because the king will try to slip out. Now, in this case, again, you can play knight takes G6. Your position is so overwhelming. But, you know, why prolong the game any longer than you have to? Instead of playing queen takes H7, you take this knight and put it here. Threatening mate here. So we see this move is then forced and then rook G1 and then you win after say king H8 and then it would be mate. So now that I showed you that variation, you see the idea behind Karpov's sacrifice. It's a blockading sacrifice. He throws this pawn up there and this shows you how deep he was thinking. And it creates this blockade so that the queen cannot try to get over or anything. Because you might be saying, well, why didn't he just, you know, take the knight right away? I'll show you right here. If knight takes here, he takes, and then let's say now he does it, right? Same threat. The queen has access and can check. Okay, this leaves white only slightly better, and black will be relieved and wipe his brow of all the sweat. This is check, forcing the queens off the board. Right? And like I said, white is still slightly better, but you were just about to deliver mate, and now, you know, you're faced with this this arduous endgame where white or black will be trying to set up blockades and things like of that nature. This is why this move deserves an exclamation mark. Karpov saw the necessity. He creates this threat and he forces Korchnoi in a blockade himself. This is why Korchnoi played bishop takes d5, understanding that the knight, you know, the knight was about to play knight takes f6, but now you got rid of the knight. Now he just takes with the pawn, still threatening. And now after e takes, f takes, king f8, and now queen h8. This works because the main idea, let me just save this real quick. The main idea is after king e8, then knight takes d5 check. Okay, queen, and then rook e1. And now you can see after the king moves, the rook on e8 will be captured. Okay, this leaves, you know, only a move like that. So either rook takes e5 could just be played immediately, or if white wanted to be, you know, torture black a little bit, he could play a move like queen h4. Okay, so after queen h8, Korchnoi had enough. So again, we see another vicious attack from Anatoly Karpov in this position. 1975, Karpov is playing a dangerous attacking player, Limerick, and who was rated 25-25 at the time. Again, we see bishop c4, and Limerick's idea is to you know, get his queen side attack started immediately. He wants to basically have the A pawns and B pawns running and get this rook to c8 and basically get his attack rolling as fast as possible. Again, he was a dangerous attacking player. He's not as known, but you look at his games, a lot of vicious attacks. He was like a Tao type player, Nesmentinov, and Kuprechik, like that line of attacking player. Okay, bishop b3. So just immediately, Karpov just stays calm and sticks the knight in there. Why stick the knight here? Well, the other part, remember I told you that a lot of Karpov's style deals with prophylaxis. He knows that black wants to play this. This is very important, is understanding what your opponent is trying to do. He knows the opponent wants to play rook c8, and he wants to have this pawn and this pawn rolling. Black is even willing to sacrifice this pawn. He knows there's two pieces on it, just to have, if he could just erase these two pawns from the A and B file, he would be happy. So with a5, he sticks the knight here. So now this is impossible because of the blockade. So what does Volimirik do here? He just plays a4. He says, all right, take the pawn. Right? He wants open files. So bishop takes a4, rook c8. So he has kind of like two of the three files open already before white has even started his attack. Of course, this comes with the price. What's the price? It's a pawn. So the attack doesn't work out. You just down material, and you know how that goes. So king b1, knight a5. Again, the same thing. Knight's coming to c4, right? Because the c file must be utilized. So the knight has to get out the way. Sometimes the knight will go here, but he went to the a file instead. So bishop b3, knight c4, queen e2. And what I find interesting about this move is that, yes, Karpov could have played, just traditionally bishop takes c4, rook takes c4. But again, and had a slight advantage, maybe play queen e2, queen d3 here, hitting the rook. But again, each player has a different style. So for Karpov, he'd rather play queen e2 here and give up this dark squared bishop to keep more pieces defending his king. So that's what happens. Knight takes e3, queen takes e3. And notice now this bishop here is very strong. If he got rid of this bishop, black might have more attacking chances. But again, it's a judgment call, and it has to be based on concrete analysis. But you can see the style here. Rook c5. And again, notice white has not started his attack on the queen side yet. Knight d4, queen a7. White is making sure that defensively he is sound. And it makes sense if you think about it. Black has already sacrificed a pawn. So the way Karpov is looking at it, Karpov is saying, I'm a pawn up. So I'm just going to play defense, and I'm going to solidify my position where it's impregnable. And then we'll just go, he'll try to attack and overextend himself. We'll go into an end game. I'll be a pawn up, and I'll win the game. That's what that's where he's at right now, I'm sure. So a3, rook a5, queen d2, knight e8. Again, black is pulling out all the stops. I told you the guy was a dangerous attacking player. Matter of fact, there's a variation in the Sicilian named after a Volimirik. Knight d5 by Karpov. Okay, we're looking at knight takes e6. Excuse me, e7. So e6 is played. Knight b4. Knight c7. c3. Again, notice this fortress, that Karpov has set up. Like, he knows the guy's coming to attack, so he just sets up a fortress. He keeps the pawns hanging around the king, and he knows he's up a pawn, And there's little weaknesses in black position. Notice after he's played the move e6, yes, he drove the knight away, but now look at the d6 pawn, right? There's a pawn isolated here on b7, right? These are all things to keep in mind. All right, so c3, Okay, we got this fortress, nice fort being built up by white, and again, it gives a nice insight in the style of Karpov that he basically has this extra pawn, and then he just kind of doesn't attack, right? Because a lot of players would be stuck in that mindset. They would be like, oh, I'm playing a Yugoslav attack. I got to blow black off the board. But he was flexible enough where he could just change his concept in the game. He let this guy Limerick do all the attacking, sacrifice a pawn early in the game, and then he just said, okay, I'm going to play defense and hold this pawn. So knight a6, and check out this next move by Karpov. He just simply plays knight dc2. Wow. And you could just see this fortress. Like I don't care. You're not using the normal rules of chess. You are not breaking through this successfully on the queen side. Knight c5, and finally Karpov strikes. So he let the opponent kind of overextend, and we see this obvious attack right here on the bishop. And Karpov strikes. Queen takes d6. Now, of course, if knight takes here, then queen will take this bishop. So now he's up another pawn. But Limerick wants to keep his pieces on the board, of course. Karpov sits back, bishop a2, knight a4. Okay. And again, it's getting pretty dangerous. This looks pretty intimidating. I mean, now you have these sacrificial ideas, right? Of knight perhaps taking there, bishop here. You know? Karpov finds another awesome move, queen c7. Okay? So some of you might be saying, hey, why queen c7? Well, the idea of just trading off some pieces. And bishop e8. So now, after rook d8, Limerick plays bishop f6. Okay, so this makes white's advantage grow, right? Trading the pieces off and being up 2 pawns, right? That only increases his advantage. Queen f4. This deft attacking move by Karpov. Now, again, there's nothing wrong with developing the last piece and just playing rook d1. That's the most natural move. Queen f4 attacks the bishop on f6. But queen d8. And that's why I mentioned rook d1. Because if rook d1 is played, then black doesn't have the chance to play queen d8. Queen e3. Queen c7. And now the move f4. It's a strong move because now Karpov wants to play the move e5 and just shut out the black bishop on f6, which he does. Bishop g7. Knight d4, and we see the attack that's being driven back. Another pair of minor pieces traded. And now I'm sure black is wondering what happened to the attack. And now, only at the end, we see this kind of nominal attacking by Karpov, right? He just basically shores up the queen side, king side rather. Black closes the king side down, and now he's gonna realize his advantage on the queen side. There's a 3-1 majority, right? Where's that rook going? Nowhere. He's forced to give up the exchange. Knight takes c6, bishop takes c6, rook d4. And what can I say? This is Karpov at his absolute best. 1975, just rock solid, man. Just this style of chess at its apex. I mean, he's Petrosian here, like Petrosian +1. You know what I mean? At this point in his career, it's like he's a combination of Petrosian and Nimzovich. Just reincarnated into this super grandmaster at this time. 1977, Bad Lauterberg. Player with the black pieces is Gennady Sisonko, rated 25-30. Here we see a change from Karpov. We see this move Bishop E2. And usually this is a quieter, this is not a Yugoslav attack. This is just a old school dragon. It's a regular dragon where usually white ends up playing F4 here. He moves the king, of course, to the H1, anticipating, some activity along the G1 A7 diagonal by black. Usually a prophylactic move that's done right before F4 is played or right after F4. And there it is. The idea is to play F5, exploiting that position of the bishop on E6. Bishop C4. Bishop takes, knight takes, queen E2. White is not concerned about this pawn here. The knight D5. Okay, knight B6. Queen B5, knight D4. Pair of minors is exchanged. And white just has a pleasant position where he holds all the, all the positional trumps in the position. Any type of pawn moves by black are going to end up being some kind of weakening move, or further weakening into the position. C3, bishop E5. Bishop B6, knight takes B6, knight takes B6, rook A6, knight comes to C4. Okay, see the B7 pawn is attacked, so the bishop must go, but he doesn't take that. He takes the A pawn, and he could have played F takes. He had a couple of moves. He could have played F takes G6. He could have played knight takes E5. That's probably what I would have played. Just getting rid of that bishop, doubling up the pawns. But there's a lot of options, followed up by rook D7. He takes this, and it's understandable because now he has this nice majority against this one pawn on the B file. Okay, the idea here, of course, is if king takes, then, D5. D5 is possible, or even rook takes C4. And now this would be a bad move to take. If queen takes D5, then ouch. Discover check. So knight B6. Of course, Karpov ignores that. Black gives up the exchange. And it's just a simple, technical job now. And Karpov just, has like an iron grip on the position, man. And the guy just, black resign here, just squeezes you to death. Like, this is just, it just squeezes you. It's not nothing spectacular. And it seems like he's not doing that much during the game. And you just end up just squeezed. Like, look at this position. Black resign here. This is over. And you don't even really know how it happened. You could go over the game and you would still be, you have to look at the game for a while to really, digest it. Just a positional masterpiece here. And what I like about it, it's not all straight attacking. Like, he's not just, busting, just all these sacrificial attacks. It's just that, he just, gets a better position. Puts his pieces in good spots. And just takes his time. And then just trades, and next thing you know, he's just winning. Let's move on. Okay, the white pieces, Anthony Miles. This is the same tournament. That game against Gennady Sisonko, that was round 1, his round 10. So Anthony Miles, Britain's first grandmaster, he probably saw the game and was like, "Hey, I can improve on Black's play." And then he decided to surprise Karpov. Karpov came with the same move, Bishop E2. And let's see how Miles did. Again, the same idea, King H1, preparing F4, F5. Now we got Rook D8. Of course, one of Black's main ideas is to play D5 in the position. White wants to suppress that. Bishop C4. Rook F2. And the idea behind Rook F2 is, in this position, you want to stop D5, but you don't want to have the queen and rook oppose each other. So Rook F2 prepares the maneuver Rook D2 so that the rook is in front of the queen, and putting pressure on the D file. So E6, Rook D2, Queen C7, and now Queen E1. Why Queen E1? Well, you don't want to use the queen in that capacity for too long, right? Holding back pawn breaks and stuff like that. So the queen makes way in order for the other rook to slide over. And then the other idea is so that the queen can move over to the king side and need be to participate in any attacking schemes that may develop. So H6, Bishop H4, Rook D7, Rook A D1, and now Miles commits to this move, E5, which of course has the downside of weakening D5 here. Karpov gets rid of the bishop, gets rid of the knight on F6. This is one of the major themes, again, when you're trying to stop your opponent from playing D5 in the Sicilian. You get rid of that bishop, that knight on F6 rather. And what happens is the dark square bishop often, is bad. Bishop G4. This is a committal decision here from Miles. He decides to give up the exchange in order to keep this bishop relevant. Yeah, he could have played a move like Rook D8. And maybe after a move like Bishop E2, I don't know, F5, perhaps. Or Bishop E6 and F5. It's interesting. Instead, he decides to play E takes F4 and gives up the exchange. And again, white is just better. Karpov prevents the the counterplay, puts the pieces on good squares, and it's hard to beat an opponent if his pieces are on good squares, because after all, you have to have some type of justification, like when you are attacking, or the attack will be classified as being unsound. But with Karpov having such healthy piece placement, how can you attack a guy like that? Very difficult, especially as a young man. This is his prime. Every player has their time, His prime was from like 74, about 74 to like 83, 84, you know what I mean? About 10 years. He still played good after that, but his prime, when he was shining at his brightest was in the 70s. 74 to 83, mid 70s to early 80s. All right, knight takes F4 happened. E takes F4. Rook D8. Again, Rook D2 can be played, but C4 is just real simple. natural looking move. King h8, h3, bishop h5, and then Karpov just played rook e1. Again, just totally winning. Miles resigned here. There's nothing left. So you can see that this style, you see Yugoslav attack and you think it's just going to be, well, actually the last two games weren't Yugoslav's attack. These are old dragons, known as the old dragon. But you could just see like just the different styles. There's more than one way to skin a cat. And you see Karpov just, just amazing. Here's another game. Las Palmas, 1977. And he plays this old dragon again. Okay, b5 again is a direct assault, or indirect assault rather, on the e pawn. So bishop f3, rook c8, knight hops into d5, knight d7, there's c3, protecting the pawn on b2, and now queen e2. Karpov's not worried about a move like knight takes d5. That'd be bad. Knight c4, rook a d1, rook fe1. Again, beautiful piece placement. Queen a7. Notice the king is neatly tucked away at h1. Bishop h4. Rook fe8. We see the knight is going to reposition itself at d3. a5. Knight f2. Bishop d7. Bishop g4. Getting rid of that light square bishop. a4. a3. Okay, so now the pawns are fixed on the queen side for both parties involved. Queen b7. And now that the queen side pawns are fixed and black has no more counterplay over there, white is going to resume his attack on the king side. So rook f1, f5, f6, and then we're going to see a tactical shot right here from Karpov. And if Karpov sacrifices a piece, that means it's probably over, because he's not that type of player, right? When Tao sacrifices a piece, it might be, there might be some chances. You might have a chance because it might not be sound. If Karpov sacks a piece, that's a wrap. That means that you messed up. So bishop takes f6, e takes, knight g takes f6, bishop takes, knight takes f6, just massive liquidation. King f8. Now you see the position getting broken open. H takes g4, queen g4, knight f7, queen takes g6, knight c e5, and knight h7 check, and black resign. Okay, that's again just devastating, just devastating precision, and he just makes it look like a day in the office. Let's keep going. Gennady Sisonko is back in Tilburg, 1979. He wanted some more. Bishop e3, f3, and here is Karpov again returning to the Yugoslav attack. I'm glad to see that. Those games are a little more exciting. And here we see this variation with h5, which was pretty popular. And the idea, of course, is to slow down this assault of the h pawn. The downside of it is that it weakens the black king side more, and it actually makes it a little bit easier to attack, because now the target is moved even closer, right? White doesn't have to push his pawns as much, but and it also weakens the g5 square, and but the downside is that the downside for white, it slows white up just a little bit. Castles. Knight e5, bishop b3, rook c8, bishop g5, rook c5, Rook h e1, b5, f4, knight c4. Now knight eg4 definitely has to be considered since white left that hole there. Plays this. B takes c4, B takes c4. Now the B file is open. B takes, and e5. This is always dangerous in these Sicilians. You see the bishop here is kind of just protected by the queen. You see these two pieces lined up. Bishop g7, e6, bishop c8. And now we see the same problem that occurred a few games ago, where black hadn't really gotten his kingside counterplay started. His queenside counterplay, and white had already, pushed his pawns and everything. This is the same scenario. Is that after that exchange on c4, black's queenside counterplay kind of stalled, and we see white getting a little crazy. On the king side, e takes f7 check, rook takes f7, knight e6. This is all forced. Rook takes e6, queen a5. So he's desperately trying to, create that spark on the other side of the board. Karpov plays queen e3, bishop takes c3, b takes c3, and the idea behind this queen e3 is just to create an escape square for the king. Now he could play rook takes g6. This move actually pins the bishop, so the bishop can't play here, right? So I don't know if Karpov had considered this move, or he might have saw this move and then rejected it, figuring he had to move the rook or something. But after a move like king h7, he has a nice move, rook g3. So if bishop takes, so for instance right here, then he has rook takes c3. Then on queen takes a2, then you just follow the queen. Now the queen is trapped. So he might have not saw that. So he played queen e3 instead, which gives the king place to go. Now he takes king f8. And now, black is in all kind of trouble. Black cannot get to the white king, and black's king is open. Pieces get traded off. And that's how that game ended. 1979. Here's the Phillips and Drew tournament, 1982 in England, and I think this was actually on TV back in the days. There might have been some video of this on TV. Some video of this television broadcast on YouTube. Here's Anthony Miles again with the black pieces. Again, some of these guys, they just couldn't get enough. They came back. Yugoslav attack with g4. Karpov is in an aggressive move here. Here's again, Miles' idea is to play b5, b4, bring this rook here. Right? So it's real simple, the intentions. Right? So it's all about the speed. Who's gonna get there first? Okay. Now Karpov could have played h5, but the style of player he is, he just said, hey, let's do this end game where I'm going to be slightly better. And that's what he does. Of course, not knight takes. That'd be a mistake. Bishop takes g7. a6. You see, this gives you an insight on Karpov's style, how instead of having this double-edged attack, now Karpov will attack if he's the only one that has the attack. But if it's like double-edged, like where both sides may be like attacking simultaneously, he doesn't want to have that. Right? He'd rather just go into an endgame where he has a slight advantage. Here he has more space, 2 bishops. He's fine with that. He's like, okay, I'll just keep putting my pieces in good squares and I'll outplay you. But he's not gonna be involved in a shootout where it's like, if you make one slip, then he'll get checkmated. You know, like where he's got your king side busted open, you got his queen side busted open. You know, either he has something clear and he can just have he has all the attacking chances, you have none, or he'll go into the end game. So knight d7, f4, rook h3, rook e3 is played. Alright, so after rook e3, b5, bishop takes g7. And this is always a critical decision in these positions when you give up the dark square bishop, because you have the light square bishop remaining, and then this knight can, you know, hang out on the dark square. So it's always an important decision, and you find that in some of the accelerated dragon continuations where you have a similar position to this one. So a5, b4, b takes a5, knight c3, rook bc8, king b3, rook c5, a6, knight takes d5, and here Karpov decides to give up the exchange here. Rook takes d5, rook takes d5, and rook c3, rook d8, rook c7, bishop takes b5, a7, king a4, rook takes b5, rook takes b5, f3, rook b8, f2, rook takes d8 check. A little bit too slow for Miles to deal with here. Okay, so after king g7, right, let me just save that. After king g7, you know, like try to get away like that, then white can just simply play rook g8, check, followed by queen, and if king e7, just queen again. All right. Same tournament, Jonathan Mestel with the black pieces. And there's this Yugoslav attack here. And we see Karpov just going for it here. Again, sacrificing the pawn. And these positions for the initiative is like, you know, nothing. So knight e4 is played. And again, Karpov looks at the position. He's like, okay, I got, you know, these two isolated pawns right in the middle of the board. No problem. So he goes right into this ending right here. All right. Bishop takes b7. Bishop takes b4. Bishop takes c8. Position is real unbalanced. And just like that, Karpov is just better already. Okay. There's only two results possible for white. Either he's going to win this, or it's going to be a hard struggle for black to draw. It's perfect position for Karpov. Right, the little checks here and there, they don't mean anything. Gets on the back rank. Starts harassing the pawns from behind. The old admonition of Tarish is get behind the pawns. Here's a perfect example of the Karpov style right here. Now rook d3, right, attacking the bishop. Right, followed by rook takes e6 is good too. Right, and just winning, you got, you know, eyes on this pawn that's weak. But he sees a basic continuation. Played rook takes f7. See, he'd rather have a win that's maybe like more slightly difficult but less counterplay for the opponent than go for something that's going to give a bigger advantage objectively, but then the opponent has more play. He wants to take, again, his style is like prophylaxis. He wants to take as much play from the opponent as possible. So rook c8, and now it's just rook versus bishop, and he's like, this is easy. Bishop e6, He's just pushing the pawns up the board, and that was it. He takes the takes squares away from the opponent, and Mestel resigned. Okay. 1986. So here's now ex-champion Anatoly Karpov, but still very strong, playing in the Olympiad against Kirill Georgiev, Grandmaster. And you see the old line with Bishop C4. Much water had flowed under the bridge by then in Dragon Theory. Karpov plays H3. Of course, I mean, I think 9 out of 10 people would have just tried to open up the king side right there. But he wants to stop A4. Rook D2. It's a hard-fought game. This game ended in a draw, actually. And if you notice, I haven't showed you any losses in the Dragon by Karpov, and this is not done intentionally. It's just that the man is just has a stellar record against the variation. So again, his example is definitely worth looking at and studying and reviewing. This game ended here in a draw. Of course, black is slightly better, theoretically, topically, but you have these opposite colored bishops, and so they agreed on this draw here. Next game, again round 14 of the same event. The first game against Georgiev was round 11. This is round 14 against Alexander Snapsik. He's rated 2483 or 2425. I'm sorry. Here's a Yugoslav, and I'll go faster because we already got the basic points. But here's Karpov. Again, pawn sacrifice. All this is schematic by now, right? Just like Fisher said, right? Sack, mate. The knight moves from F6, and now this knight goes into D5 with tempo. Rook E8. And now Karpov sacks a piece. Rook takes H5. Remember, what I said, when Karpov sacks a piece, it's usually the game is over. You know what I mean? He's, is correct. So G takes H5. But actually, in this situation, it's unsound. But his opponent did not find the right moves. So Queen H2. Again, with just, it looks brutal with the obvious idea of Queen takes H5 followed by Rook H1. Okay, but it's hard not to panic. You're facing a former world champion and he sacks a piece. So you're thinking, man, this guy must be right. And it's very difficult because he can't play E6. Right? You got the queen would be captured. Playing F6 is dangerous because of the bishop on B3. So this is a very dangerous position. I'm not even going to say that it was unsound. I mean, this is more look at it. G takes F3, queen takes H5. Yeah, this is very tough position. If black tries to counterattack with A5, the idea of just playing A4. I think queen takes H5, and let's say he tries to keep going. I mean, what are you going to do about that? Right, takes, and then black has to be getting mated here. Yeah. Bishop H6. So, wow. Queen H2 by Karpov. Rook C4. He just snatched the piece off. Give me that. And why did he do that? Because he has to be able to play F6 or something. So that's the idea. Because remember I was telling you before, if he tries to play f6, then, then you got this diagonal open. So he just puts the piece right in front. And now he plays f6 without worries. Karpov plays f4. Knight f7. Bishop h4. Queen to b8. Rook h1. Knight f5 is interesting also. F5 also, but rook h1 is most natural, just getting on the file. c3, b3, queen b7, and now f5 by Karpov with the idea of knight e6, cutting off escape routes for the king. So knight e5 was played, and then Karpov just jumped in with knight e6. Okay, and white went on. White actually not went on. White won the game right on the spot. Is black resigned. Trying to just give black some moves. So for instance, if he tries to do queen a6, queen a3, and mate, and you play moves like that. Let's say he does that. Check, and just not fast enough. This is a blitz game. This is against Sasonko again at 87. It's funny how these guys play each other multiple times. Again, I'll just speed through this. Same tenets and principles. All right, getting rid of the important piece, which is the bishop. We see the defense of Karpov. Right, solidifies the position. Trades off the pieces, and then just transfers into a better endgame. Remember, now you see he's up a pawn. And, but just like that, man, mate in 2, king e7, queen d8. Dude made a mistake. That was a blitz game. Okay. And, that was it. I mean, Karpov played a few simultaneous, but that was basically it for his his methodology and philosophy against the Sicilian Dragon. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Again, it's a little long, but that's what it takes, man, to really to do justice to what's going on here in these players. And also, this is my vision as on the chess channel, is to basically try to teach this stuff as I've been shown and I've been taught. So I know people like the short videos. It's like, but you can't make everything short like that. You know what I mean? Little, you're not learning nothing. You know what I mean? It's got to be like hard, it's work. But anyway, like I said, I hope you enjoyed that. Please like, subscribe, comment. And Karpov was a monster in his heyday. I know, like, people, a lot of younger chess players, they, know about Magnus and Fabiano and these guys, man. But these guys are pre-computer, what I mean, and the accuracy they play with, man, something like you put these guys' games in engines. It was playing in the 70s and stuff like that, man. It's just spectacular and a pleasure, to look at the game. So anyway, you saw Karpov's response to the Dragon. You saw how he played. He attacked. He played some attacking games, and he played some positional games. One game that gives great insight into his style is a game against Limerick. Again, if Karpov didn't play double-edged attacking games too much. You noticed that. I hope you picked that up. He didn't. If he had to attack, an opponent didn't have any attack, then he just went all out and just steamrolled the opponent. But if it was like the opponent had an attack and he had attack, nope, he would just trade the queens off and then play positional with the positional advantage and win like that. You know, he wouldn't let it be like a wild shootout. You know, that's more like Kasparov's thing. You know. All right. So anyway, that is it, and I'll see you guys on the next presentation.